Monika Panpaliya, Senior Director of Information Technology and Data Analytics, Boeing International. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together!
I'm good. Good afternoon. Wow. We just saw the current, what's happening at Boeing in India, but let me paint this picture. Think about the future of the world. Think about the day when we are going to be going from one town to another town in a matter of minutes. We're going to be able to cross the globe within a matter of an hour. We're going to see colonization on Mars, and we're going to see clean energy through solar. All of this is not science fiction. All of this are things, are ideas that companies like ours and yours are working on for the betterment of the future. So to the girl power in this room, good afternoon, and you have a very, very bright future. And can we give an applause to all the girls that are here? To your men diversity partners, and I see a few here, a round of applause as well. And to the Society of Women Engineers that has been the driving force behind inspiring more women in engineering, recognizing and educating what it takes to stay within the workforce. Thank you so much. It is my privilege to be here on stage and to be amongst all of you. I think the collective IQ and EQ of this room is an all-time high today. Because we know that women engineers not only have an amazing intelligent quotient, but also an emotional quotient, and that's what differentiates all of us. So I want to start today talking about two big things in terms of, what is it that all of you can do and what I have learned over my journey. We can go to the next chart. The first is about laying a foundation, and the second is about having a capstone on the foundation. So, like many of you, I grew up in Pune, right here, which is a big coincidence, full circle coming back. How many of you are from Pune? Wow. And, this is an amazing city to have this kind of conversation because in the very old days, when it was a taboo for women to get education, Pune was a place that women came to get education. So just a great venue for having this conversation. There's a saying, Jithe Pune, Tithe Une. Anybody understand what that is? Yeah, some of you from Maharashtra. So there are no deficiencies, we used to say, in this city, right? You can achieve whatever you want. You dream big, you fly high, right? And this is the city that gave birth to a lot of different leaders. Lokmanya Tilak, Agarkar, Sarla Birla, right? So some of these pictures may be familiar for those that have been through some of the colleges here. My college, my schooling actually started here in St. Ursula's and Kamal and Bajaj. And the one thing, when I always entered the principal's office, we had this poster. And what did that say? Give a man a fish, and he eats for a day. But teach a man to fish, and he eats forever. And being gender neutral here, that was probably equally right for women, right? So it was a lot about your foundation, your character, the values that we learn in school, the emotional capability that we develop, The physical fitness, well-being is important as well, and the intelligence or the curiosity that we have. That's what school is all about. It's very unfortunate that only 48% of Indian women are literate today. So we have a long ways to go in making sure that we're providing that right education to women. We showed some of the community pictures here in the video, but we need to do more in terms of K-12 outreach, and that's what we're doing, Boeing as a company. We are also, and this is a bit funny for some of my American colleagues, but we're also building toilets in the villages, right? And you all know that in India, when we have toilets in villages, that allows girls to step out and go to school, right? So those are some of the things that we're doing. In terms of college, I saw my affiliate college up there, College of Engineering, Pune. That is where I went for engineering, and I will tell you that Pune had a very welcoming and friendly environment, even though females were in the minority. In the mechanical engineering department, in my year, we had one poor soul, female mechanical engineer. Computer science, which I went through, a little bit better. But overall, today, do you know what the percent of female engineers is in India? Any guesses? Yeah? So it is about 30%, which actually beats the United States. And how much do we have in the United States? 20%. So that's goodness, but it's not enough. And that is what makes all of you so special, because you are amongst that 30% of women engineers in India that many of the companies that are dreaming of those futuristic projects are looking for. Then let me, cite to you. So as, when I said Pune is welcoming, we had, Mercedes-Benz had just started a big plant here. And, we had this sort of engineering auto show, and all of the women girls, we were like, oh, we're never going to be able to kind of buy that, and just going from the side. And the salesman pulled me in, and he said, if you study hard, one day you can actually own a Mercedes-Benz. And he actually let us sit in it, which was very cool. And I mean, and frankly, he was right. So after the COEP days, and if we can just keep on the previous one of the things that holds women back, what happens after you graduate? Marriage? Ab to ladka dekhna chahiye, right? It's time to get married. We got to find a groom. So that was certainly the point in my career. But my parents have always been very liberal. My dad himself is an IIT engineer, and all his kids and all our spouses, a big engineering family. My poor mom. She is the educator and the artist in our house. But he was always very liberal, and when I got admitted to the University of Illinois, where, Illinois obviously where SWE started, they were very, very supportive. And, my dad always had a passion for engineering. I did not as much. To be frank with you, I loved math and science, but I always wanted to do medicine, okay? So, and I loved math and science, and when it became evident when I won the National Talent Search Scholarship, which everybody around me was surprised, but I wanted to go to med school. I got admission here in Pune itself. My first time I went to the dissection room, and I saw the room with the chloroform, with the corpses, and what you need to do. I was like, I'm going to be a woman engineer. So I don't know about all of you, but that was my turning point. So I went to Illinois, and it was a great school. Again, we only had 6% of female engineering students at the time. And what I'm very proud of, because I was just looking at the statistics from University of Illinois, today they're at 46% female computer science graduates, from the same department. And, that is exceptional. And, for me, it was a very scary moment. And that's why I say, character first, but then courage. So courage to go to engineering and confidence. So we were a very middle-class, simple family. Getting an American education, paying for it especially, was not affordable for my family. And so when I went there, I had to figure out a way to, earn my living and, pay myself through college. I was lucky to be selected for teaching assistants and research jobs, which I did. My scariest moment, when I went up the stage and I realized this discrete mathematics class that I have to teach, it has 300 undergraduate American students. And that was a terrifying moment, because let me tell you, I was a very shy person. And, the fear of public speaking, the fear of, facing a culture that I didn't know anything about was real. Over time, we made some good connections. I learned their culture, they learned some mathematics, and, it was all good. So that's where I really, think when we have these moments in our life, we just have to muster that courage and confidence and keep going. After I graduated from University of Illinois, I didn't have any more excuses for marriage. And I found a really, great person. He was studying at University of South Florida, had just got a job at Delta Airlines, and he was from my same community and everything, so we got married. It was a traditional Indian wedding in Nagpur. Anybody from Nagpur? Right. Oh, you're from Nagpur? Wow, okay. And then, one of the things that I will say is, your career, it's a family affair, right? Because we think it's my career, it's not, right? It's a family affair, because things will change over time. Your family will never change, right? You always start with your family, and you end with your family. So it was a big decision, and he's always been very, very supportive of the things that I've wanted to do. And my first job was actually at Verizon. Some of you may have used a Verizon phone, maybe. And that was a lot of lateral rotations. I was in a rotation program for top 10 schools. And advice I'll give you is, we always think about how do I go up. But the career ladder is actually sometimes a career lattice, right? Where you have to take some of those lateral moves so you can get the big picture. I also worked at a startup after that, which was very, very enjoyable, owning a whole product, trying to get, at that time, WorldCom, our customer, convince them of using that product. Unfortunately, 9/11 happened, and you know what happened after that. The stock market crashed, the investors pulled out of our startup, and so I ended up going to Sprint. We were doing the 3G launch, and it was just a great time to be doing something different and new. And you can go to the next slide. Sprint, the thing that I learned there, I was a very good technical person. I had reached the highest moment or highest point in my technical career there, and I just couldn't get into management. It's because people thought about me as the person that has patents, the person that is very good technically. So I had to do something different from from branding and positioning myself. That's where I told my husband I want to do an MBA. It's going to be in St. Louis. It's a 20-month program. And St. Louis, we lived in Kansas City at the time. It's a 4-hour drive. And so, will you support me? And he and his parents did. And I said, by the way, while I'm at that program, I also want to pursue one more passion. Any of you that are dancers? Dance? Yeah, lots of them back there. I wanted to finish my Bharatnatyam Arangetram. Right? You know what that is? And I dreamt of doing this. I'd done it in childhood, and so when I went to Kansas City, I'd found a really good guru. So that year was very grueling for that 20 months. And we had a 2-year-old son. Very tough. And the thing that I learned there is the clarity in terms of your priorities. Because you'll have a lot of moments in your life where it's a tug of war between so many different priorities. A mom, do I pursue a passion? What about my career? And so the clarity of I have to be focused, I have to get through this. My social life was completely dead for those 20 months as I focused on getting through and with the amazing support of my family. But it really helped me then get into management. And at Sprint, I managed a $1 billion product portfolio. I managed an acquisition of Clearwire and got to build some great products. The thing, though, another learning for me was my network was very insular, right, or very close-knit. The people I knew were really the people I worked with. And so it's really important to be at industry forums such as this so you can build your network, you can connect with other people like you can learn what's happening in the industry. And so in 2012, there was a Women of Color conference. It was held in Texas. And luckily got selected for my technical contributions for an award. And that was a point also in my career where our company was going through an acquisition with a Japanese company called SoftBank. It was a great company, but it was just with all the change in leadership, I decided it was time for me to move on. And Boeing provided me a great offer to lead their end user infrastructure services. And so my family moved from Kansas to Seattle. Day one on the job, I walk in, my boss comes in to get me introduced, and he says this: Monika, you are a woman, you are an Indian, you are young, and you're not from this company. This is going to be a very tough role for you. But you've got to show your team and the people here what you're capable of. And, and then he left me with, I think at that time we had 400 people on that team and a $300 million budget. And, good luck. So the thing that I learned there was you have to learn to listen to your people, to what's going on. Because as an outsider and as a leader of a team that our median age was about 55, and I was in my 30s, most of my team, very seasoned, very tenured, very, very smart people. And so listening and getting closure on many of the topics and decisions, that was my biggest learning. I will say that at the end of that year, I had the highest employee engagement scores in the entire engineering, technology, and operations. So that advice, listen to your team, was very, very useful. So the other thing I'll say, the charisma there ties to the network, but candor. As I was looking at where Boeing is going, a lot of globalization, I was very, very interested to do something internationally. And so you got to speak up sometimes, because as women, we tend to wait to be asked versus speaking up and saying, this is what I'd like to do, and what do I need to do to get from here to there? And I raised my hand, I said that I would be very interested in an international role, and that's where our CIO did pick me up to lead the international IT, and then, as you know, also the Boeing India Engineering and Tech Center. So that's been phenomenal. I will say one more thing here. It is always a juggle with 2 kids now, and with a husband who's also traveling and an executive. And we have our moments, where I always try to keep professional, personal separate. But what I learned over the last couple of years is you have to start bringing them in. I had a moment where we were on this video call with the Executive Council of Boeing, which is the group that reports to our CEO. We're inaugurating our rotation program where we allow people from India to go to Seattle, vice versa, different countries. And little did I know, and I was at home, it was 7:30 in the night, my little son walks in with his tennis, he had just finished tennis class, and there were so many people on the video, and so it was just a very embarrassing moment at first is what I thought, but our president immediately said, Arjun, thank you for supporting your mom for her career. And to me, that was the grace and the humility with which we need to live by, because our lives are not separate. Our kids and our family are all part of our lives. So I will end with this. I love the quote there that says, I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free. It's by Michelangelo. And each of you here, you're all angels. You can dream big, you can fly high, and set free that angel that's there. And as I've covered the 6 C's today, it's about having the right character, the right courage and confidence, that's your foundation. And then when you start thinking about how do I climb up the ladder or do more, it's about building your charisma, right? Having candor, right? And clarity, what's your focus and purpose? So thank you so much for having me here, and with that, I will end this.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. So I've got a couple of prepared questions, and then hopefully we have some questions from the audience. One of the things that struck me about your talk is you talked a lot about kind of what I would say like the core components of leadership. And SWE does a lot of programming about kind of that transition from an individual contributor to a leader, a manager. So I wonder if there's one piece of advice to give someone that's either aspiring to make that transition from an individual contributor to a manager, or is going through that transition right now. What would be that piece of advice?
Yeah. So there's a saying, "What got you here will not get you there," right? Because when you think about what's required for management, the people skills, the business skills, that's a lot different from what's required as a technical leader. And so the one piece of advice that I would give you is, if you want that management job, you got to show up as if you are in that job. Dress your part, act your part, take stretch assignments, and that's how to do it.
Well, thanks. And a couple of things that have come up over the last couple of days, and one of the questions that we had talked about before your keynote, there was a Catalyst report about women in the workforce in India, and what it reported is that men are 3 times more likely on average to be hired and promoted than women at every level. So executive level women leave at a rate of 28%, double their representation at 14%. So the rate of attrition is higher than that of any other level. What is your insight on this type of attrition? And then maybe, I guess from your perspective as an executive at Boeing, what are some meaningful interventions that can be undertaken to mitigate some of this?
Yeah. So from a company perspective, we are very focused on diversity and inclusion. In fact, we just had our summit in Anaheim, California last week with our CEO and his executive council, so that's how important that is. There's a few reasons why, we call it the leaky pipeline. So when you see the pipeline, and I'll just give an example from ours, we typically have about 30% of women in your early career days. Then when you go to management, so let's say your first line, second line managers, we're typically around 20%. And then when you look at the executive population, that typically drops off to 10%. And so what are some interventions in making sure that instead of going 30, 20, 10, we're actually stabilizing that? So first of all, we look very closely at succession plans. Over the last couple years, we've made it mandatory for people, for all executives on their succession plan, to have at least one woman. One woman on every plan. And it's not good enough to have somebody on the plan. You've got to be working with them to groom them also. The second thing is that a lot of times women hesitate, because I know when I had some of these decision points in terms of taking an executive job or going to the next level, it's always, am I going to be able to balance that? And so, we really encourage for you to have some mentors, because there's a lot of self-doubt sitting here. Can I do that? And when you're doubtful, then somebody else that's trying to make a decision, is not going to see you in a bright light. So those would be the two things from an intervention standpoint.
That's fantastic. And I was curious, who has been like the biggest mentor in your life? So that's, you mentioned your husband and your family, but is there someone in your, sort of, at the companies that you worked with or at Boeing that has really made a big difference on your professional career?
Yeah, lots of people, because you have a network, and you're learning something from everybody. There was a time in my career, as I mentioned, when I was at the top of the technical ladder, and the biggest leap of faith that our head of product made was, he said, I want you to be my chief of staff. And it was a very different role, and so many companies have this chief of staff role, because now I'm managing his life, his meetings, his ops, his finance, the roadmaps, which was a completely different thing from writing patents and inventing new products. But so Len, who's now the executive vice president at Comcast, here in India, our Boeing president, Pratyush Kumar, he's a mentor of mine. From an Indian perspective, the things that we need to do to make sure we've got diversity, we're building the cause. Our Boeing International president, Mark Allen, amazing champion of diversity and inclusion, and a lot of, even though I'm not in his direct reporting line, every 6 months we do have the conversation. It's about what are potential 3 roles that you could take in your career, and what is the development that you need to get you there.
Fantastic, thank you. And I'd like to switch gears and see if there are any questions from the audience for Monika. All right, do we have, oh, there we go, we see it.
So when you were studying in Illinois at that time, did you face any racism in the forms of, not just as a woman, but as an Indian, perhaps?
I'll say that there's, points in your career when you think, oh, is this an old boys club? Or, how do I enter a group, that's together and I'm not able to get together. But I think as I maybe got more experience, what I learned is many people have that same doubt. So it's not so much that, okay, I'm an Indian woman and I'm not being allowed to enter in some place, but perhaps the men are feeling the same. And so to a certain degree, those did come both in school as well as in my career. But I think you have to think a little bit more about what's that person's perspective that maybe is not letting me into that conversation, and then just try to think a little bit from his standpoint. But I find that many people have that kind of feeling.
Hi Monika, this is Catherine from Boeing as well. So I have this advice, what you told as the biggest management advice, that show up as if you are already on the job. So I've had this advice whenever I wanted to advance in my career. But when I do that, I get a negative feeling that people think I'm being overconfident or that I am, no, they have a negative impact about that, my colleagues. So how do I manage that? Because being a manager means that you get to make your people trust you. So how do we do that?
Sorry, I was looking there, but you're here. Because the speakers were sounding from here. You know, what I mean by you got to act the part is that you need to demonstrate that you can do that role. And, you know, through the stretch assignment or through taking on leadership within that. But you're talking about, you know, when you act the part, somebody feels that she's being too overconfident, or, you know, she's being too bossy. I think we used that word yesterday at one of the sessions, right? And not to create that perception, right? I think what I would suggest is, so first of all, you want to make it known to your manager that that's what you're aspiring toward, right? Because it shouldn't be, you know, why is she suddenly so bossy with everybody? I think you want to make it known to people what your aspirations are. And I mean, I think it's okay to take charge and take the leadership, but people need to, you know, probably understand that your motive is not so much to take away somebody's job, but it's as much to learn. So, you know, think about it more from, you know, I'm taking this assignment so I can learn something and just make it known to people around you.
Thank you. I think we have time for one last question. So I don't know who that goes to, but.
Hello. Yeah.
What's
My
that?
question is, yeah, here. Normally it is said that after marriage or having kids, only one can make his career or her career, or other one has to take one step back. So what is your experience on that? Is it true, or both of them can balance their work life?
It is really tough for, you know, both you and your spouse to advance. I'll tell you what's worked in our case is, you know, we take our steps, but the timing could be a little bit different. And, you know, luckily when I had a really busy role, my husband had a little bit more of a stable role. And then when he was doing worldwide sales, you know, I was able to step back. But I guess I would say you have to be creative in finding the solution. And, you know, versus saying that I just have to take a step back and, you know, I can't move forward. And then I would say that maybe there's a way to time it so both of you can, you know, move each other along.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Monika. That was great. And I think we have some, a gift for Monika? Yes,
Oh.
okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow. It's a beautiful, sweet Bluetooth speaker. I love it. Thank you so much. And, you know, it's our first time at SWE in India for Boeing, so really appreciate, you know, the partnership here, which I know we've had in Chicago for a long time, but then to continue it and further it here in Pune. And my team was clapping that next year we'll be in Bangalore, because that's where they all are. Yeah. Thank you again.